Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the first live stream on Streaming CT. Well, the first live stream with me on it on Streaming CT. This was a last minute decision. We may even have a special guest or two, so stay on by for that. But wanted to talk a little bit about the AT&T outage that we've had in the US today that seems to be resolved, hopefully for now and forever. But yeah, say hello in the chat. I see David Grishko is here. Thank you, David. David joined early. Um, David says, I'm curious how everyone dealt with the outage. I know it wasn't limited to wireless and the issues were going on since 2 a.m. In the enterprise space, dedicated circuits, WAN, etc. Jeremy says, here we go. Welcome, Jeremy. Yeah, so I'm actually using StreamYard because I'm testing out. Yeah. And but I didn't log into my YouTube channel because I thought I'd be streaming to multiple destinations, which I still might be. I'm actually curious if I can add another destination while I'm in. Let's see. Is that possible? Yeah, I guess you can. Because if we have others join, we may stream to other locations. But yeah, so say hello in the chat. Let's see. Jeremy says, I saw people complaining about it today on Facebook. Did not impact you at all. Yeah. So what happened? Well, we don't know exactly what happened, but overnight, at least Eastern time, AT&T began having sporadic outages across the country. Jeez, I can't speak. Major metropolitan areas were hit harder, it seems. Other cell phone carriers reported outages, on Down Detector it was reported, but the other cell phone carriers. So there's three major carriers in the U.S: AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. So those three carriers all were showing up on Down Detector. If you haven't heard of Down Detector, it's a website where you can see, and even FirstNet and others, Cricket, all the sub tier carriers were showing up as out as well. Something like 40,000 ish customers affected. This morning, when we were getting up, it was the T-Mobile and Verizon were saying, "Hey, it's not like our systems are up. It was all AT&T. No problem with our systems. It's just AT&T people trying to call Verizon or trying to call T-Mobile people, and so it seems to be localized to AT&T. AT&T has been fairly quiet on what happened, but I did see just before we went live that the Fed, the U.S. federal government, is going to be investigating what happened. Whether it was, there's a lot of theories, right? People jump to, could it be a hack? Could it be some sort of cyber warfare? Could it be just someone pushing bad firmware? I will say that it's unusual, the symptoms, having worked in IT, that I experienced personally firsthand. So Ashley, my wife, myself, she looked up. She's in the studio with me. And then we have a work phone for one of our employees, and we have a few other devices. So my phone showed SOS, had no bars. The employee work phone, SOS at the top, no bars, basically means there's no service. But Ashley's had service. We're all on the same plan. I was sitting right next to Ashley when this happened. And then eventually it came back. So it's just very odd. Normally when you think like of a software issue, you would think it would be backbone related. So it'd be like you'd have bars, so to speak, but you'd have connection to the tower, but you wouldn't have internet connection or phone connection. So that's what's a little strange is, and on top of that, even though we're sitting next to each other, one of us doesn't have a connection, but the other one does. So unless it's there was just a certain number, like a limitation of number of people who were receiving like DHCP IP addresses or something from the tower, and that showed up as no service. But even then, it's a little bit odd. So, oh, and Ashley says yes. Don't forget to hit the like button. So we have 6 people here, 4 likes. Used to go live actually every Thursday around this time, back when I had a channel called Cajoling Technologies. For those of you, some of you may remember. So this is a bit reminiscent of that. We used to do that. Used to do Zoom call afterward. So if anybody thinks the audio or video has an issue, let me know. It will show up as 720 just because I am testing StreamYard and I did the 720 plan. So you'll see, but tell me how it looks. I think Jeremy, you have the 1080 plan, right? Because you've been able to do 1080. I was looking at that. That has I just did 1 month on StreamYard to play with it because I know there's some new features. And honestly, Jeremy, yours I've been kind of impressed with some of the layouts and things you've been doing. So David says, we know Facebook once wiped itself off the internet by making a mistake in BGP config or something like that. I remember that. They couldn't fix it because they couldn't connect back to the routers. I didn't notice since I'm watching on my phone. Well, 90% of the world watches YouTube on their phone. So TVJ has made that case many times that 4K is for fools. So yeah. Jeremy says, I do have the 1080 plan. It worked quite well for me. Yeah, I saw they have the webinar feature as well. So that's pretty cool. So we are going to talk a little bit too tonight about redundancy. You've heard me talk about the Mr. Net box, and this channel is specific around live streaming, not IT. And luckily we didn't have a stream today. We weren't doing any broadcast, but I'm sure others did. And if they were using an AT&T hotspot as their primary form of streaming, they probably had a bad day. That's the nice thing about having redundancy. So we're going to talk a little bit about redundancy, and like I said, we may have some special guests as well. In fact, let me check if my special guest is ready. Special guest, if you're ready, give me a thumbs up. Oh, there's a thumbs up. Okay. Let me give one more check of the chat here. David says 4K is for all of humanity. I'm a big fan of 4K because I usually watch these streams. I'm not usually on them, and I'm watching on a 65-inch TV. Not trying to brag about the size of the TV. It's now you can get a 65-inch for like $5. So, but that's I usually watch these things. Ashley laughed out loud. She covered her mouth. But I'm a 4K fan. You experienced the webinar part where I did the Linux webinar while back. Yes. And if those anybody's watching this before or after, Practical IT with Jeremy Like is one of those streams that I watch on my TV. And David Grishko is thinking about starting to stream. So let's click back over here, and I will bring. Hey, I see a background. Okay. I don't know. Does this thing have a drum roll? Jeremy would know better. No, it just says acoustic cinematic. I don't think that's really a good intro. But all right, here we go. Mr. Anton himself, Anton Shmakov from Mr. Net, the guy who makes, well, a bunch of people make the router, but co-founder. Can we hear you okay? Can you hear me? Oh, I think you might be muted.
Oh, that's right. I muted myself on my mic.
I can hear and see. How are you?
Very well. Do I send you much of noise?
Not bad. I think StreamYard does a noise cancellation.
Because all of a sudden, as soon as I turned my mic on, I started hearing you a little bit quieter. It's possibly my laptop is too noisy for you.
I do hear a fan. Yeah. You're on a Chromebook?
It's do you know the brand System 76? Have you heard of
Yes, I
them?
do. Is it the framework laptop? Is that no? They don't. Is that the what? No, they don't
This
make
is
that.
this is an open source laptop. When it's not just core
Right, right.
Linux, but they also the boot system is open source. So it's like they all end-to-end open source, and it's kind of they praise themselves and the best security from that perspective. So there is
Yes,
no any backdoors.
they
But
make Linux Mint. Is that
they have own Linux. I forgot what it's called. They have own version of it. I think it's based on one of the common distributions, but they have I don't remember on top of my head. And they have very, very good composition and very good software pieces, but the casing is crap. So they do like the one of the Chinese off the shelves, and it's nice for first few days, and then you realize how big of a crap it is. It's
so?
like
That
it's
okay. So you just need to rip the guts out and put it into
exactly. But
a
I'm too
MacBook
lazy to
Pro
do that.
case or
Goes
something.
that far.
So okay, so you use Pop OS. Okay, that's
Papa,
that's
that's
what.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So David and Jeremy are highly skilled in the YouTube chat here with Linux, far beyond my knowledge of it. In fact, Jeremy's channel is has a lot of dedicated stuff on that. So, are you going to get a framework laptop?
Not today.
No, not today. Not a huge fan.
Well,
Oh,
maybe,
that's right. You
maybe.
have
It's just too much on my
you
head.
run a company, so I guess you have to
Exactly.
be careful with your opinions. But are you running Linux on the System 76?
Yeah. I been Linux only for the last 10 plus years. Like I haven't seen any
Oh
other
man,
thing. Oh,
I hear
okay.
Jeremy screaming.
I take it back. I had in a few previous jobs. I had to have Apple Mac OS because of the when every member of the team is on one system. It's easier to be on the same one, even if you have flexibility, because they call the tool sets that are kind of streamlined for specific OS. So there were a few Mac OS intermediaries, but my personal was on. Basically, I'm running on Ubuntu mostly, but I've been on Ubuntu for like 10 years.
Nice. Look at this. I can play with some of the. I'm trying to put you on a different screen, so I'm looking a little bit up here. So, and then I can put the. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. So, what I really want to ask is, since for those who don't know, Anton is a co-founder and heads up Mr. Net, which they make this box. It's a multi-WAN bonding router, cellular bonding router that uses 3 carriers: T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. So I'm really curious, have you received any customer calls? Have they had any issues? Like, how was your day? I was imagining that maybe your day wasn't so great.
My day was extremely busy, but it had nothing to do with the outage. So
Really?
then that's because what we saw is our dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree, like around the because we monitor all of this stuff, but we saw that absolute majority of them were still live and completely uninterrupted because AT&T went down, but others were good and stable. There were a few oddballs where it looked like the other two, the T-Mobile and Verizon, also had hiccups, which got recovered pretty quickly. So I don't know have exact answer whether it was a coincidence or whether there was actually issues with the networks. But yeah, AT&T been down. It's been down all day for a lot of our units. So we have like all of units all across the country, and about a third of them couldn't connect all day to AT&T network. So it's been, and like, I don't remember the breakdown, but I think the West Coast was more affected than the East, if I remember correctly, or the other way around. But one of the sides of the country where the issues was more prevalent as far as AT&T not working. But again, that's the beauty of what we do, and it's kind of like shines into the beauty of redundancy, of built-in redundancy, and kind of like the diversity of your channels, because we use all 3 and sometimes some local ones in the mix. And it went down, the system immediately adjusted. We used the other 2. And for the customer, nobody called us, nobody complained something is not working. It's just business as usual for everybody. And even my team, like there was not much to do. It just automation worked. We saw the dashboards, we monitored, we looked things, we looked for anomalies, but there was really nothing we needed to do to adjust.
Interesting. So I'm curious about the blips that you've seen on the other carriers.
I'm also curious about
Um,
this.
yeah, because they've come out and said T-Mobile and Verizon have pretty much said, no, 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 we have no problem. We had no problem here, right? So either is there peering or what? Like,
Yeah, I think so. From the looks of it, it looks like something went down on the core network of AT&T. From the looks of it, is it must be a software issue because again, hardware breaks all the time, but hardware doesn't break in a way which when the entire country goes down. It's definitely a software issue. Where intentional, meaning the cyber attack you were talking about, was it some sort of a mistake? I mean, maybe we'll find out, maybe not, but it does look something went down in the core, at least from the. I haven't dug much into it, but from what I see, that would be my best guess. And so, what could have happened? Again, we only saw it in a couple areas, so it could be very, very localized. But what sometimes happens in those situations is when if one carrier goes down, the load could be distributed to others. They may have some sort of roaming agreements in place. There could be third party running all three carriers. There's a lot of different setups how the network can be set up. And what could have happened is that one went down, all the clients went to another network, so they kind of like overloaded simultaneously, and then it had to be readjusted, and kind of the cell division needed to be adjusted and redistributed, and kind of like to restore the quality. But most likely, the T-Mobile and Verizon weren't really affected, and all the reports most likely were because people were trying to call AT&T customers and they were shut down. So that but again, on some odd smaller markets, there is a possibility that just networks got overloaded because of the influx from other networks. And that could have caused some shorter term issues on other two.
yeah, that makes sense. Well, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like everybody's talking about seeing SOS on their phone, right? And I think there's a law in the U.S. That if you dial 911, which is our emergency services number, even if you don't have service with a particular carrier or you've lost service with a carrier, that if it says SOS, you can actually still dial 911. It'll just go out to Verizon or T-Mobile if you have AT&T. Or with the new iPhones, I don't know, you're a Google
The,
guy, you can
the,
actually use satellite.
yeah, this definitely works when there is clearly you don't have network, you don't have coverage, whereas your plan is inactive or there is just no towers inside. So your phone knows that it has to jump on different network. But if your network is present and your phone thinks that network is present, but the routing doesn't work in the back of it, that's much harder problem to solve. And I would imagine that there is a possibility that when routing is broken, it will not dynamically switch you over to alternative paths because it couldn't detect it. So that's
Right.
why, again, that would be my explanation, why my guesstimate, why 911 calls wouldn't go through from AT&T.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of going down the path of if like my phone said SOS, I had 0 bars. So it appeared that I was not connected to the cell phone tower. Like I had no service. So in that case, I'm wondering if
It
that's what
should.
flooded Verizon and T-Mobile to all of a sudden getting these soft connections to like because they could be getting a 911 call. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so what? Yeah, what phone does? Your phone, when it doesn't have the network, it starts scanning things. It starts pinging everything it sees. It starts checking out what it can connect to, and what it does in the room and what it does in the field. It's why your battery going to be draining very quickly. Like if you go into areas like that's why a good thing to keep your phone in the airplane mode when you're on airplane, even besides the fact they want you to, is because it will drain your battery because you're not going to have any network and it will just keep looking, keep searching, and it's pretty significant. And so that's definitely what happens. If you lose a network, it starts searching, starts trying to find something relevant. So, and yes, it does make some soft checks on the tower. So that could be one of the reasons.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all hypothetical, but let me just check back in the chat real quick, and then I have a few other questions for you. So yeah, those are saying that System 76 looks after Pop OS. Pop OS is based on Ubuntu. Jeremy says Framework just announced a $500 laptop made up of leftover parts from previous product runs. Are you guys going to do that with your old Mr. Net boxes? You're going to make some sort of cyborg, Frankenstein. Like
There were some ideas. And yeah,
antennas coming out the bottom.
I have a lot of in my basement spare parts from previous projects, from current Mr. Nets, from like prototype versions of Mr. Nets. There's like you can do a lot with those. You can like build some botnets, you can build some mining operations. There's some ideas.
Did you say botnets?
No, I did not.
I'm starting to think maybe I have the culprit of the outage today. Um, let's see. And David had said, "I'm curious. Did any Mr. Net customers have a giant win today because they were able to use other carriers?" It sounded like they did. They may have not even noticed,
Well,
which is a
that's
win.
the thing. It's kind of like the fortunate and unfortunate thing that majority of our customers didn't even notice that it exists. Like if they didn't check the news, they just like it just worked and they don't care. It would
Yeah,
be it's great, could be great marketing for us if they will like say, oh, it's broken, but it works for us. But yeah, they didn't talk to us, they didn't reach out to us because it just was smooth, it's working. Everybody on our dashboard was just, yeah, it's smooth sailing, connections are stable, nothing to worry about. So it just worked.
it's awesome. David said, I saw that T-Mobile and Verizon had hiccups, but I was reading it was due to all the sharing a common backbone, which fixed quickly. Yeah, so that's what we're saying. And Ashley's asking if you are just joining, comment in the chat. First of all, where you're from, and thanks for joining. But did you experience any issues with the outage? It didn't come back for us until just before noon Eastern. And the other, well, one of several Antons has joined the chat. Support, Mr. Net support here. Today is the best day. Not a single inquiry. We could peacefully enjoy our coffee while gazing at the Hudson. That's precisely why Mr. Net is not on Down Detector. A constant green line is boring. People are divided into two types: those who make backups and those who haven't made backups yet.
Nice.
I think maybe he should move to marketing instead of support, Anton.
He actually is pretty good at it. He did just today, we were, like shooting war stories from his use. How he was, he had like one of the social media groups like the 100,000 followers. How he like spin it up in a couple years, and how they've made a thing out of it. So he has some talents, which is under discovered within his current position because there's too much work to do. But they'll put
A
it to use
startup.
one day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Anton, we may need to have you do more marketing, I guess. So David EW98 says, I'm still having major issues in northeastern Maryland. David, let us know what type of issues you're still having. I was having issues until just before noon, and they seem to have cleared up. I know that actually the last few days I've heard reports of 911 centers in different parts of the country having issues. I don't know if they're related or it's just coincidence, but yeah, definitely let us know what's going on. I guess that kind of leads me to like the thought of redundancy. So this channel is live streaming. You guys, by the way, this isn't sponsored or anything like that. Obviously, I own a box and we do resell the box because we have a live broadcast and streaming business and video production business. And Anton and I have gotten to know each other through that. So, but we use redundancy for a reason because we have been burned on live streams and live broadcasts before where we think the Wi-Fi is good or we think the network's good or we think AT&T is going to work. So we're a big proponent of not just having one connection for a stream, or at least a stream you're being paid for. Something
Mhm.
like this is a little bit, that's why it's disconnected, because I'm just using my actually I still do have a failover connection in the studio even without the Mr. Net, but it actually just got back in my hands today from being tested by Jay. So anyway, the the topic of redundancy, I guess, is the point. That's what's on the thumbnail, and it's. I think you have to, if you're doing really anything that's mission critical. It's Anton, and obviously we're in broadcast, but like, what other industries do you talk to that this would be considered like mission critical? I know like point of sale is one of them, but and did you mention like supercharger, like electric
I
charging
mean,
stations and stuff too?
if you're talking just about the connectivity piece, what happened over the last, again, 4 or 5 years is that it's all of a sudden became critical for everybody. And that's how the name of the game in telecoms switched, is that everybody is still trying to talk about who's going to get better speeds, like 200 megabits, 500 megabits, a gigabit connection, which is fantastic, but really very, very, very few people actually need it. What most of the people need, most of the businesses need, is just stable, predictable, reliable connection, which is not going to fail you in opportune moments. And what changed over the last few years is that now, if you're offline, it doesn't really matter what you do. You're screwed, because it's like you cannot conduct your business. And in streaming is obvious. You literally cannot deliver the content you need to be delivering. But as you mentioned, the POS, yeah, like if you're a restaurant, 10 years ago, nobody cares about internet. So if somebody going to call you, you're going to place an order, you're going to pay with cash. You don't really care about internet. Today, internet down, like nobody, like, even if they can pay, which has issues, every offline mode has own issues. But even if they can pay, nobody can order things all of a sudden. So like you half of your business is gone like this. And then my favorite exaggerated example is an ice cream truck in New York City. Yeah, 5 years ago, only cash only, because you don't have to pay taxes, so it's easy. All of those small businesses like to run on this. But today, if you don't accept credit cards, you're not going to sell ice cream, because nobody has cash in their pocket anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go around the city and you have AT&T hotspot, and all of a sudden it's running the wrong block and it doesn't work, now you cannot sell it, and that's a problem. And so basically, yeah, if you look across, it's everything is connected now, and most of it has to be connected at all times. You mentioned TV
Mm-hmm.
charging stations. It's actually, like, according to my data, which is not the most well researched and validated, but I talked to quite a few people in the space, that's up to, like, there have been a search recently about how unreliable the charging infrastructure in the country is, specifically for the EV cars, and that significant portion of those unreliable cases is that they don't have reliable connectivity. And in my estimations, like somewhere between 10 and 15% of chargers this very moment are offline solely because the connectivity failed. And there is no good way to solve it for them. So they have to call a technician. Technician have to drive there. They need to, like, basically power cycle it and leave. And because, again, the volume, because it takes time to drive, it's a huge problem. And we've
Right.
perfectly positioned to solve it. So that's one of the places we actively talking to the players and trying to figure out how to help them solve this problem. And some of the industry, like the gas stations, they knew it and they figured it out a while ago. And so right now, if you go to any, like, big name gas station, they have all the corporate standards. And if you look around, every gas station has a satellite antenna to it. I never paid
Really?
attention before until I talked to them, and now I see them on every single gas station. You can see a satellite, because that's what they do. They have a core network, they have a cellular, and they have the satellite all packaged together. And every single gas station owner, every franchisee has to have it, because it's mandated by the corporate.
No kidding. Well, it's funny you should say satellite, because it's very funny, because I'm constantly trying to buy new toys, tech toys. Others who are in this tech world are probably have wives or spouses who are not thrilled when I you come up with a new idea. So I was just talking to my wife yesterday. I'm like, we really need a satellite phone. And she says, "What the hell do we need a satellite phone?" She holds up her iPhone. She's like, "Is this? I mean, like, why wouldn't we need this? We have this, we have this phone in our pocket. And I'm like, well, what if the cell phone networks go down, or what if we're somewhere with no cell phone? She's like, well, don't you have that Mr. Net box that, like, isn't that going to work? Like, you're on the phone with these guys all the time. You're constantly running around with this red box. Like, we can't use that thing. So I'm like, no, if there's no cellular, it's not going to work. So we just had that conversation. She's like, listen, we're not going to pay $100 a month for the service and $1,300 for the phone for something that's almost, it's never gonna, like, the cell phone networks don't just go down, maybe for a few minutes. Literally yesterday that conversation happened. So we woke
Oh.
up this morning and she's like, I don't know what you did, but you obviously hacked the cell phone network so that you've really gone to new heights to try to get your toys. Oh, she just run, I thought he made the outage. She really did. She's like, what, so satellite. But yeah, I guess just once up. I want to come back to satellite. David Grisco says Eastern Washington, no issues here today. iStream Pool says public safety, another use case for sure.
Oh yes, that's yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
also on so many levels. The utilities, the grids, like anything distributed IoT, like if you distribute sensors around, it's not, because it's not just about, in our case, reliability is a big play, but it's also about how do you cover multiple locations when you have multiple hundreds of them.
Mm-hmm.
And with the old mod, it's just there is no way you can figure out it's going to be AT&T and it's going to be Verizon, and I'm going to manage 300 SIM cards from one and 200 from another, and then it's going to be different. Just it's giant overhead, and when you just connect all of them, you don't need to think about it, and it's
Yeah.
reliable. When things happen like this, you just don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So okay, so back to satellite. So I've done some just cursory. What's the word? Cursory. There we go. Cursory research using the interwebs, the series of tubes that are out there that we call the internet. And I have discovered that there's basically 3 consumer usable satellite networks
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. So there's Iridium, Immersat, and Geo something, Geosphere. There's basically 3 networks. Iridium has the most. I think it's like, I don't know, 66 satellites or
It's
something.
the most well known, I would say.
The well known, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can readily get their devices, their phones. It's what the Garmin devices. So if you've heard of like the Garmin InReach, the little pocket size, or the GPSs, like people who go, I mean, I don't really leave the indoors, but if you were to go on a hike and you didn't have cell service, you can push the SOS button, you can text through it, and it goes, you get a plan, and it's a little bit cheaper. So I've just been looking into it because I'm thinking, like, obviously you have Starlink, right? And Starlink,
Mm-hmm.
they do have a mobile version now, which is expensive. Yes, I would love to strap it to the top of my vehicle and drive around and get internet anywhere. But again, I don't go many places other than to work. But I'm just thinking, like even Apple with the new phone. So if you have a 14 or newer, you actually have a satellite antenna in the phone that connects up to. So when you see SOS, if you can get outside and get a line of sight, it actually will, for the first 2 years, they've said. And I'm definitely not an Apple fanboy, just to be clear. I know you're a Google guy. We'll get into that. But so but the point is there, supposedly the rumors is that Apple right now, it's just for basically for SOS, like for emergencies, but the rumor is that they're going to start to sell services, and satellite will be available in more mobile devices. So I guess, because I'm started thinking, well, let's say the entire cell phone network went down, obviously the Mr. Net at that point, unless you have a Starlink or another ISP or something that
Mm-hmm.
you can go and bond into. But I guess even in that case, you're really not bonding because you only have one WAN on this thing, right? So I started thinking,
Mm-hmm.
like, what's the next direction for if I wanted connectivity or backup to redundancy? that if cellular's off the table and I need to be remote. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the satellite
Well,
stuff?
that's. I mean, it's very very open. Satellite is the first thing to come to mind. There are other options. They're all very localized. You yourself send me like this quirky mesh network, which very cool, has all
Fantastic.
limitations. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So there are ways to do it if you dedicate it to it. As a generic solution, probably today satellite would be the only thing which is realistically available. And on satellites, I think it has bright future. And again, the Starlink is joining this team up, I believe, and to do it
I
under
heard
the
that.
regular
Yeah.
service, which is important. Note you mentioned about different antennas. What beauty of the Starlink that you don't really have to have different antennas necessarily. Like if you do stream just cell signal from the sky, it's gonna be fine. It's actually like how some of the previous solutions for the internet on the fly. There's like satellite options, and Starlink now doing it very well. But before that, there were options how you beam from the tower, you just put the tower and point it upwards, and it hits the main airline routes, and you can beam the cellular into the airplane, and you can just hook up from that. It's obviously more expensive option because if you point the antenna upwards, there's not that many going to pick it up, but it has been done before. So the cellular frequency is pretty easy to transmit. The challenge going to be like how do you not validate the frequency agreements? How do you like not create extra noise? It's that part is complicated. The transmission is not complicated. To orchestrate it and to be part of the ecosystem, that's hard. But sounds like
Yeah.
they have a plan. But if that plan works, in theory, you can make the current phone work over Starlink today if you do it right. The question is whether they will pull it off or not. I'm not so sure. But and satellites in general as a source of connectivity, it's great in terms of to have these options, and it's fantastic that it's been more developed and more deployed, and especially for the rural areas. That's pretty much the only way to do high speed broadband in rural at scale would be Starlink like solution, like low orbit satellites. But the biggest drawback of satellite is that it will never give you the capacity to cover significant percentage of the population. By significant, I
Mhm.
mean double digits. It's just no way it can go to double digits of the bandwidth capacity. Single digits is already very very optimistic how much it can handle. So that's the main issue. So it's like it will never be the prime source of connectivity for majority of people. It can be the good fallback, and again, like calls, SOS, text messages doesn't require too much bandwidth. You can actually put a lot on it. But as far as like watching YouTube over satellite for everybody, that's not happening.
No, no, and I've heard over the like if you follow the subreddits for Starlink when it first came out, I mean, I was all about it. I'm like, I gotta get it, I gotta get it. And then by the time I finally was available to get it, there were so many posts about like, oh, I had like 300 megabit down and 100 megabit up, and it was perfect and low latency. And then now people are getting 20 down and 2 up because their area is now saturated. So
Yep.
yeah, but on the flip side, so I actually did get a quote for an Iridium phone and for a plan before I went to this conversation with the wife. Or maybe did you know that I did that, Ashley? No. Oh, she's not listening. Okay. Um, I got a quote from Iridium for an Iridium satellite phone and the service. That's how I
Mhm.
had the numbers when I presented this to you. So the phone itself was $1,300 for 10 minutes or units. They call them a month. A 10-minute a month plan was $89 a month, I believe. And that also gave you the US, you get a US number so someone could call you. So a single text message was so basically for $90 a month you can make 10 1-minute phone calls, or you could send. So it's like totally crazy. So I guess in one sense like Starlink, oh man,
That
we
sounds
only
like
get,
80s.
we're only getting Yeah. I mean, but I guess there's probably not enough customers to keep the satellites maintained and up. I think they said they only last about 12 to 15 years.
I mean, it's both. It's both. The problem is twofold. It's like not enough customers, but also if there's too many customers, then it's going to be another problem. So you need to have like some golden medium
Just
where you
enough
have just
to
enough to power what you can power, and then so that's price discovery is very important for that sort of business. But they're
Yeah.
alive. They've been around for a while and they're still running. So I guess it's working for them.
Yeah. Well, they're charging $90 a month for, people say, oh, Mr. Net, they charge $1,500 a year. And then you start hearing what a satellite would cost. It's like, holy crap. So yeah. All right, so let's just see here. Let's see. Ashley says still can't get the phone. Jeremy says Joe's trying to get more toys since he was denied mounting the antenna to the top of the van. That is true. That is very true. That I have that Parsec antenna, which I promised Todd that I was going to test when I got this back. So that's on the list for the next day or so. I have for those who don't know, I have this giant antenna that was sent for me to test, and it's got a big pipe on it, like a threaded pipe, and I want to drill a hole into the top of our cargo van, and and have the ultimate. What I really would like to do is also put Starlink up there, so and then patch that into the Mr. Net box. But yeah, I'm not a multimillionaire. Ice Stream Pool says, I work for Crown Castle, which is the largest provider of cell towers in the country. I just moved to Farmington too. Well, welcome. We should meet up. Crown Castle, yes, is a huge backbone. Didn't I saw something on CNBC. I can't remember what it was. Were you guys just purchased or sold or something? But when I guess in this area, I tried to get, this was before fiber was available in Farmington. I tried to get it, and I actually called Crown Castle, and they kind of laughed me out of the room. They're like, "Oh, yeah, it's going to be like $5,000 a month, like for us to pull that fiber. Like, you're gonna." So it was comical, but yeah. Do you guys do any work with Crown Castle, Anton?
That's we actually kind of we had some conversations, and I think there are quite a few opportunities where we can work together. So
awesome.
That's on the map.
I didn't realize you guys did the cell towers too.
Well, the thing about cell towers, we haven't, to be clear, we haven't done much yet, but we had a lot of interest from a lot of different players. And the reason being, the cell towers, while we provide the cell signal, which is kind of ironic, but the cell towers themselves, there are a few interesting use cases there. The first use case, a very simple one, is like when there is maintenance on the tower, or you're just constructing the tower in the first place. You need to communicate with your back office to like send pictures, to like do the specs right, to do the right tests, and etc. There's a lot of reasons why you would like to have a live connection, but since you're building a tower, the coverage are going to be not ideal, and having something like we have, which connects to all the networks around you, kind of going to give you this extra edge and to simplify this flow. So for the crew teams, so just technicians who are going to visit towers for one or another reason, that's a very useful feature, useful tool. But another piece is I heard from a few suppliers who build towers in rural areas. That's what one of the common problems there, like Midwest areas in particular, is that often people break fiber because they think it's copper lines, and they're trying to steal those, and they break in. It's like they find it's a glass, so they cannot take anything out, and they just park the showers and leave. But meanwhile, the tower is offline. What you gonna do about that? And what conversation we had, kind of again, very exploratory, very early on, not too much to talk about, but that maybe we could put some security cameras on Mr. Nets as a backup, so they're not going to have like some deterrent to this. But also another piece is to have some diagnostic access to the equipment on the tower. So if the tower misbehaves for whatever reason, It could be because of the pipe coming into the tower. Again, for whatever reason, there could be many different reasons how it would happen. But having something like our unit, which is going to give you, in those scenarios, going to give you access to run some diagnostics, understand what's going on. And again, half of the time is just going to be as simple as like power cycle it remotely. And all of a sudden your tower is up and running, and your downtime went from a day to a few minutes, and you don't need to get people back and forth. So it's like giant cost saving for the maintenance. So that's two applications with the tower space specifically today. And I have some ideas down the line for the bright distant future, which probably that's not exactly the conversation I want to have right
now. Well, I'm sure it's interesting. But yeah, ice stream pool. I am curious with you being involved in cell phone tower, providing cell phone towers in the U.S. If you have, I'm sure you probably can't share much, but if you know anything more than we know, I guess the recap is that the Fed is now saying they're going to investigate the AT&T outage today. It's just amazing how many thousands were affected. You don't typically see such a wide scale outage. I
mean,
guess
that happens. Well, you don't see it, but it happens all the time. Like 2 years ago, that was Rogers. Exactly same thing. There's Rogers in Canada. 1-to-1.
But we're in the U.S., Anton. I mean, we've got big diesel truck. Like we don't. These things don't happen to us.
Exactly. Yeah. What's particularly concerning about AT&T case, because that's AT&T like runs, as you said, the first net run by AT&T, and I'm not sure how that was impacted. AT&T has some federal contracts on the just direct wired phone lines. I'm not sure what happened to those. So there's extra concern specifically about this case, what may have gone down. But again, typically, I have no information what happened there, but typically 8 out of 10 is that it's some sort of mistake, human mistake with a software update or deployment or configuration. Something just didn't go quite right, and it just spins out of control all of a sudden. Some small thing, small bug, which causes giant issues. And when you operate at scale, such as AT&T, this is quite easy to spin out of control. Like one of the things, like the stories from Google, one of the lore stories there. Like when you join Google.
Oh yeah. So Anton used to work for Google. For those who don't know, you were what was your title?
I was software engineer to run a team of engineers, small one, to build things. Just
are you?
Everybody's an engineer in Google. Everybody's engineer in Google.
Right. But what did you actually do there?
Primarily ads. So the ads we chase across the internet, I was part of it.
Gotcha. So if any of you have gotten an ad during the stream, it was because of Anton.
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
I participated. But so like when you go to Google, they have this 2-week onboarding sessions, and there's a lot of different things that explain how things work, like the tool sets, the practices, blah blah blah. But one of the things they give sessions Google Scale, and my absolute favorite talk from the time, and it's like kind of shared opinion. But then when the guys who run data centers come and tell their stories, and those data centers, I think two fascinating things about those in context of this conversation about redundancy. One thing is that all of the data centers, all of the major data centers have the power redundancy, power supply redundancy. They always built next to utilities because it draws so much power. They need to make sure that they're going to have the closest and the cheapest rate and the most reliable rate. But if it goes down, Google cannot go offline. So what they have, like every data center has these giant diesel generators, and for them to power the data center, it basically like those giant trucks, gas trunks, which just goes to the gas stations. For them to power the data centers, they just have a line of those trucks, and they burn through gas as fast as the truck can dump it. So it's just completely non-stop chain to dump it up to run the generator. As far as I know, at least before I left, they never actually run it. There was like one test run they had to do, but they never actually touched it. But that's the scale they operate on. Just through and through. But because they have to have redundancy, and that's the topic of your conversation. And another piece is about scale. Another thing which absolutely fascinating to me, what Google has to deal with at their scale, where they have to build redundancy on the data front, is that the data they deal with, they have to adjust to the cosmic radiation. Because cosmic radiation flips speed in your hard drive and it corrupts data. And they see it on a daily basis at their scale. There's like always
Get out.
some that's fascinating. Like if you look at the reliability of the hard drive, it's like I believe it's, don't quote me on this, but it's something like 10 in negative 20 power of the reliability of the bits. But with the data amount Google handles, it happens on the daily basis. It cosmic radiation flips the bits on the hard drives, and you need to
That
have
is
redundancy to
insane.
restore it.
So, with that, some people were talking about solar flares, and usually it's like, the tin hat wearing people are the ones who are usually talking about solar flares and EMPs and all these
Mhm.
things taking out every piece of electronic. Which let's be clear, on science says it could, but would I guess do they have any? Did you get any training around that of like what would happen
I'm
if?
not the data center guy, and I haven't
Okay,
had anything to do with data centers, so I don't know where the solar flares logically would spike it up a little bit, but from the understanding what they were describing is it like just general cosmic radiation, just whatever you have on the regular day or night, that's enough to disrupt some particular data pieces. And but that's why you have like
wow,
multiple replicas of those, and you can tell
sure,
that like you have 5 versions of it, and one of them all of a sudden went off. So something is up, and so you have to just replicate back with what you get elsewhere. But that's again daily occurrence there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was at Amazon Web Services, and it was the same kind of thing. You talk about like an availability zone. So if you put your data in, like for example, S3, like the
Mhm.
object store, it would actually be like just standard S3. I think it would go across 3 availability zones, so it would be replicated essentially 3 times. So that's how they could guarantee the durability. So there was
Yeah,
reliability and durability.
exactly.
So like the uptime of it versus like, oh wow, yeah, there's something. I have a file that's
Speaking
corrupt.
of big outages in United States
I
recently,
don't work there anymore, right? So yeah,
but that's actually like another fun war story for me. Is that was it fall 2021? Is it right?
yeah, I think it was December.
Oh,
December
yeah, late fall.
2021 was a big one. There was
Yeah.
another. Oh, there was one before that. Yeah, no, there was a few.
But so what? At least the one I remember because it actually affected us because we were running AWS, still are primarily. But back then we were just very early, like first prototype of the product, but we already had a few customers. Most of them were on the East Coast, but we had a few on the West Coast, and the outage just happened to not really impact East, but West was really troublesome. And what we had, our units back then, there was like no easy switching between the servers. But if we had a fallback, which if server disappears, it's just going to run over cellular. But so we had a few customers and it worked for them, except for one, because we had a bug in our fallback code that when it falls from server, it goes first to AT&T, and in this specific customer did not have AT&T coverage. So it went to AT&T, and then the unit freaked out and they couldn't connect because both Amazon wasn't working, AT&T wasn't working, and all of a sudden didn't know what to do. It didn't think to fall back to also to Verizon, so like three-layer fallback. So like it's kind of an example that even if you have redundancy and you think you're doing things right, and you have 2 layers, you're still gonna find yourself in a kind of funny
Oh
situation
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. If you don't test your backups and your redundancies, and that was a big thing. So before Amazon, I had a phone system telephony. I had about a couple thousand phones under me, among other things. But we had the phone system, and we were building out like disaster recovery sites. So we're trying to figure out, working with the risk management teams and figuring out like, okay, is there like, what's not in a hurricane zone and tornado zone, and like if Northeast went out, would also like, what about, you just get into these very deep discussions of like how deep of risk do you want to go? Like, okay, if we all evaporate, like, do we still want the telephony to work, or are we good if no one can even make a call because they're not alive? So you get into these like very conversations with risk management, but the point is like we were going to spend all this money or whatever, a couple $100,000 on building out another set of servers and data center, like just for this setup, and nobody had planned for, well, how are we going to test this? What's the interval we're going to test this? Like, and you can't just test it in, like, they call it sunny day testing or fair weather testing. You have to kind of do it. But I had the CEO on my phone system. Nobody wanted to tell the CEO of, like, hey, we're going to do a test during business hours because we actually have to see it under load, right? Like, so it's like, well, can we write a script that emulates it? So the point is a lot of this stuff, people spend a lot of money on redundancy, and then it never
Mhm.
gets tested, and then something happens. It's like, well, we spent all this money on redundancy, and it just doesn't matter. Um, so
Yeah, yeah,
the
that's kind of, yeah. Google has similar practice when once a year, they have a term for it, and I blanking on it, but you basically have a 1 to 2 weeks of disaster exercise when like the core
mm,
services being shut down, like some of them predictably, some of them not, and see how you're gonna adjust. Like they always isolate the production, so production never really impacted, but internal operations can be disrupted quite significantly, and you can see those holes you haven't plugged with all the your business continuity measures.
mhm.
It's always kind of fun to live
Well,
through those.
Netflix coined the chaos monkey.
Nice.
Did you guys use chaos monkey or no? Okay, that was something else.
That's not the term I ever heard before, but that's I
Okay.
think it
Yeah,
sounds descriptive.
yeah, it's a good name for it. So
Yeah.
Netflix, again, Amazon customer, so we learned a lot about it. They actually built, a bunch of engineers built this basically thing called the chaos monkey, like you're saying. So it will randomly, the chaos monkey, there's a bunch of engineers who intentionally built bots that would go in and take down portions of their network, their streaming and stuff. And
Nice.
they would see like, okay, well, obviously this didn't work. So you would, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen it in the chat, but I think I saw it once where your streaming might stop. Like if you're a consumer, it could actually affect you. Like they didn't care because they wanted to make it more resilient. So it would actually come up and say, "Oh, you've been hit by Chaos Monkey. We've been, we're testing things or whatever." And so if you Google Chaos Monkey Netflix, you'll see the whole story behind it. It's very, very interesting,
Nice.
because that's how they kept making it bigger and better. I mean, Anton, because you used to do a lot of moving video and stuff. It's a very intensive. Yeah, I mean, like delivering video and like CDNs and getting things to rural areas across the globe, like Netflix does, is not easy.
Yeah.
So, but let's see. Ice Stream Pool says, I don't know anything more. I work on the fiber side. Gotcha. Um, and Ice Stream Pool says the DNS outage. Yeah. So there were a few different. One of them I think was Kinesis videos or Kinesis streams was one of the AWS outages causes, or at least I think that was made public. But so don't sue me. But it was the problem is a lot of these services are contingent, right? Like so when we would build a service, and I'm sure it's the same at Google, we would use other AWS services. So
Mhm.
if one service was out, like that service might be crucial to another service. So what happens is it's like one little piece of the service, like Kinesis streaming, which was like ingestion of data, goes down, and now an entire other service is gone.
Yep.
So it's a domino effect. Todd Bush is in the house. What's up, fellas? Todd. Oh, and I see you replaced your picture. Who is that handsome guy you put in there? I think he stole Anton D's picture. No, he's I love messing with Todd. Todd, I hope you're enjoying your evening. Thanks for joining. This was a last minute thing. I was texting Anton and I said, like, hey, you want to go live and talk about this AT&T thing? Like, what our thoughts are? He's like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Sounds fun.
So it's kind of a last minute thing. But so I do. So let's talk for a second about the conspiracy side of what happened today,
Mhm.
and if it wasn't a problem, then if it wasn't an issue today, and it was actually just some random firmware software bug, how vulnerable do you think this is? Like, for example, could this be, a warfare tactic or whatever? So, like, what are your thoughts on some of the
Yeah.
conspiracy stuff?
The I think in this case, again, from the just numbers game, doesn't sound very likely that's what happened. I think a for a variety of reasons. Because again, generally it's not what happens, but also because it would extract more value doing it differently than just disrupting for a day. It doesn't really change much. You can make it much more sophisticated and nefarious if you want to go this
You're
route.
working on it, yeah.
Exactly. I have some ideas. but as far as the critical infrastructure, that's kind of like it's pretty hard to evaluate. I think the carriers, specifically networks, is not the weak spot. I think they relatively well isolated, like relatively well protected. So you definitely can get like a tower down, or like a region down. There are ways to do it relatively easily if you like have, especially if you have physical access. Which again, tower you have a physical access anytime, more or less. Like it's very hard to protect it. But to take entire network down, I think you have to. It's going to be people hacking, not the software hacking, as we discussed before. It's always the easiest thing to hack as a human, not the software.
Hmm.
That said, like if you go outside of the networks, if you go to just like more critical infrastructure space, utilities, just just things like that, like the just large deployments of important things, those are way more vulnerable, and at the same time, most likely more attractive for hacking. So I would be way more concerned about those pieces. Like, how do you protect those assets, which again, the electricity, the water, all of those things, as a which there've been a lot of stories in the news how easy it is, and I again haven't done it, believe me or not. Haven't done it myself, but it's intuitively it probably is easy, because
Mm.
it's hard to do secure things at scale, and when you work with sectors which historically like more conservative and behind on technology, and this way security works, you have to be up to date all the time. Like you have to have like your updates ready, you have to have new versions, you have to roll them out on a, if not weekly, at least monthly basis. And with some of those infrastructure deployments, they probably haven't seen updates in a few decades. So it's inevitably going to find holes there. Inevitably, you're going to find a way. It's just a matter of time to dig in and interest. Like if somebody is interested to do it, I am very confident that it would be hacked.
Yeah.
So that would be my take on it. And again, that's in my opinion significantly more dangerous than just having AT&T down for a day, which bad enough for sure. And I think there was a lot of, because again, in particularly the first responders aspect of things. I'm not sure what happens there, but that's very concerning. But it's still like only a sort, and there are alternatives which were available and still are available. But speaking of the redundancy, like the power grids, in my opinion, is probably the weakest link in the infrastructure, because they all heavily centralized, and they're not prepared to handle not the surges of volume, not the surges of capacity, but also like any sort of cybersecurity threats. So that's, from that perspective, that would be my highest concern. Uh,
Mm.
and that's kind of better IT, but also the architecture of the networks themselves. I think like the microgrids solutions would be way more desirable, and that's something like I've been thinking in the context of this outage today. Is that centralization versus decentralization? Is that we kind of shifting into the world where the efficiency is not the only game in town anymore. and the reliability is important. And decentralization, when done right, is the way how you do reliability. It's like that because no matter how good you are, you can push the limits. But if it's a centralized system, it means it's guaranteed it will have some sort of bottleneck. Guaranteed it's going to be weak spot, which one thing goes down, everything goes down.
Sure.
It's inevitable by design. You can make it very well, and it can last decades, but eventually it will go down. That's just reality of it. But if you build decentralized in a way which in the smart way, you can do it. You can do it badly, and it's not going to be any better and inefficient and not any more reliable. But if you do it right, then it can make a big difference.
Yeah, no, it's a really insightful point about it all. Yeah, I mean it's more of an annoyance, I guess. Right, other than 911 and first responders and things like that, it's not as bad as losing power nationwide. I mean that would cause mass hysteria. Um, yeah, I mean it would be. I mean we up here in the Northeast. I mean you're not far from us.
Mhm.
In like 2011, I think we lost power for almost a week. And then here around here, we lost power for, I think, 5 days just a few years ago. And people start to get crazy. I mean, people start to lose it. You're practically fights, and the gas stations, a lot of them are down. So now you can't get gas to run your generator. I mean, we're not in a position we don't know. I joke about not going outside, but I mean, we do not know how to live uh, a rougher life in which we don't have power. There's places in the world who can.
Well,
They
and like you don't know how to. We don't know how to, but for a good reason. We know a lot of other things, and we optimize ourselves to live the better life. But yeah, there are costs to it, and that's what we need to think about.
sure.
How do we, like in the case of a blackout for a month, what do we do? Which
Yeah,
again, it may happen. It's unlikely, but it's definitely not a guarantee that it will not happen.
yeah. What do you know anything about like how the grid like how are the grids even managed? Like who is there a governing body of all? Like, we have Pura, something called PURA over here, and we have Eversource in Connecticut, and they're like the governing body of Eversource. So like
Mhm.
Eversource can't just so it's like intertwined with the government. But I mean,
Yeah,
like, is there like a body that watches over the entire grid?
I mean, it is kind of so it is natural monopoly, and all of it, most of the grid in the US is privatized, which has benefits, has concerns, and like California grid is probably kind of the most stark example, where it was right until it went wrong, and now it's like a giant issue which they cannot figure out how to resolve. And they've been bailing out PG&E how many times because of the devastation they caused because PG&E just did not have incentive to update those transformers or the wires or the electric poles. They like put it 40 years ago, and there is no reason for them to change them. And of course, they're gonna fail. But so that's a hard like relationship between like public private, and I have some ideas how could it potentially be run better, specifically with these confinements. But again, I don't think it's particularly relevant. I think the best solution overall is again decentralized. Make smaller solutions, smaller electric plants, smaller circuits. So it's like all more localized, more community based, and now you have much more flexibility in what powers what. Solar pushes up, makes a giant difference in this capacity as well. Like all of a sudden, you kind of have effectively meshed network of electricity. So from many perspectives, the power grid and the internet grid is actually very much alike. The concepts are very similar, the distribution is very similar, and the vulnerabilities are very similar. And that's ultimately kind of like I often, when I try to explain the concepts I'm thinking about as far as the networking goes, I often bring the power grids as a perfect metaphor to what needs to be done. As yeah, like it's definitely, in my opinion, the decentralization of the critical things has to happen, localization has to happen, and it doesn't mean it's gonna break less quantity wise, but if it breaks, it's gonna break a couple neighborhoods. It's not gonna break like entire state or a country. So that's where like giant difference is, and it's all big because it's local. You can be way more nimble. You can all of a sudden you can redistribute pull from the neighboring counties or do adjustments. There's a lot of all of a sudden you have made way more tools at your disposal how to address those things.
Hmm. So you're talking about putting fuses in everywhere that will
Uh,
blow
that's one way to
in the
do
internet. Yeah.
it.
In the pipes, we're gonna put fuses. Um, it
Obviously, exactly what I was describing.
Yes, that's what I heard. So we'll go back to the chat for if you have any questions for either of us or just have a comment, feel free to leave it in the chat. If you haven't hit the like button, please do so. We're here with Anton from Mr. Net, who makes this multi-WAN bonding cellular bonding router we use in our live broadcasts. And he was nice enough to come on tonight, and we're just having a little fun fireside chat, talking about the kind of where we're at with this AT&T outage. So Todd was saying he has a buddy for 20 plus years at AT&T. He would really know. He would really know, but he didn't answer my call. We'll let you know. Then he says, "Oh yeah, he has AT&T, right?" So of course he's not going to be able to answer your call. It's not going to work. Jeremy says you can't patch people. Now, where have I heard that before? Yeah, people are 100% the weakest link. And I mean, even if you talk about the grid, like compromising someone who is probably disgruntled worker who more or less like this isn't like the Google and Amazons where you're getting stock options and nice salaries and all that, right? Like you're probably you're a lower level engineer.
Well,
You hate the company. Everybody hates the company that you work for.
yeah.
Like,
In case of Google and Amazon and like on tech giants, the security measures within the company is very impressive.
yes.
Like even if you hack people, there is like that's one of the things which positively impressed me from looking at from within is that you really cannot do much. All sensitive stuff, all which can damage company or the customer, so then people in any capacity. There's just no way you can get access to it without like giant sirens going off right behind your head that you're doing something. Or you're just not going to be have access, but there's like so many steps to get to those. It's like a bank safes with like multiple different doors and keys and tailors. So that's but even in those cases, like there are a few people who has those accesses, and there is always a way to get into a human. Whereas it's again, you was talking about disgruntled, you just sort of give some incentives, or you can do some compromat, or whatever in the middle. There's always a way, and yeah, that's why the human hacking is a probably profession which not going to go away.
No. There was at one point I was dabbling with a role that would require a top secret clearance, U.S. government top secret clearance, and I looked into what would that take, and it was about a year-long process. And I'm looking at the questions and the things, and interviewing friends and family and neighbors, and all the like polygraph. You had to take a polygraph test, and like what this is crazy. Like you don't they already know everything about me anyway? But I guess the the point is that especially if you get like especially a nation state actor who can do the research with like open source intelligence or whatever, it's easy if someone has baggage or has skeletons in the closet that can be utilized to manipulate for whatever reason. Even if they're not someone who is not, they're not a malicious person or of sound mind, a lot of times people can be flipped. Hey, I'll, like that scam that says, hey, I've been watching your webcam and I've been watching what you're doing. And if you pay, I don't know, 100,000 Bitcoin to somewhere, then
They
I
have a
won't post it
sticker
to
in
your
your
friends
laptop.
and family. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have stickers everywhere. stickers on my head, stickers. Um, but these type of things where people say, "Oh my God, like I don't want that to get out, or my personal relationships or whatever." Especially if you're doing something that's like, not illegal, but you're having marriage troubles, whatever. Like
Mhm.
there's something wrong, right? That's what they're looking for, to try to see if are you a target for someone to try to, if you got this clearance and you had access, right? So that's the type of stuff that you're not we're like I didn't have to go through that to work at Amazon. You probably didn't have to go through that to work at Google, and for sure to work at Eversource or the power company,
Mhm.
where maybe they're making a quarter of what you're making in big tech, and they, they're definitely not, right? So now money comes into it as well, where
Yep.
I'm sole provider for my family, and I'm being offered this chunk of money, and all I have to do, like, maybe they don't even know the whole picture. All I have to do is let this guy in the door, or insert this USB drive or whatever. Like, and I get $100,000, and I can, put my kid through college, and no one will ever know. I'm assured of that, right? This is the type of stuff that actually happens. Like, once you get into deep into IT, and the security side of IT, cybersecurity, and the devices and the yeah. Anyway, I could go on, but
But to kind of like give you the other side of it is like the main protection for us from this sort of things. Again, I had intrusive thoughts about this topic for a long time, but the best protection is
intrusive stuff. When you're trying to go to bed, you have intrusive thoughts about this. That's awesome.
about infrastructures. Yeah, that that generally speaking, most people are decent people, and like
Yes.
if you go like a lot of the scenarios we're discussing, they primarily the only reason to do them is to just cause chaos and harm, which is typically not a goal. Like typically, if you want to create chaos, you still want to get something out of it. Needs to be a reason. There needs to be some sort of agenda behind it, whether it's ransom, whether it's political agenda. There are things which can be reasonable, but there are reasons, and a lot of things which are extremely sensitive and like susceptible and can create a lot of mass harm and mass destruction. The only reason protects them, the only thing protects them, is that most people are decent, and there is no reason to create such an enormous destruction because you're not going to get anything out of it. And destruction itself is not enough of the motivator to do this. That's yeah, like the intrusive thought is like about like water supplies, about the subway systems. It's like you can do a lot with those things, and you need no amount of security can protect it, but nobody does it because again, there is nothing to gain out of it, and somehow we've been wired by the evolution that we don't really want to do that much harm. We sometimes do want to do harm, but it still needs to be kind of somehow localized to us, but not really like causing the thousands of lives being disrupted. That's typically not the goal.
No, no. I mean, there's mental illness that would cause that, right? But and there's, if somebody's got your feet to the fire because and has your family or what, right? There's reasons, but in general, people people are humane, right? That's where that's where the word comes from. Um, so let's see. Ice Stream Pool says ISO New England. Todd says people sell their soul for money. They will always be the weakest link. How, and he also says, how could AI be used to avoid outages like this? Yet those are the most corrupt people. Yeah, I think he's talking about the.
Oh, this is
I'm
a
not.
corruption point. I don't think AI can solve too much because AI is training on us, at least not yet. But the
So AI is corrupt.
decentralization and the blockchain kind of inspired solutions, those can do a lot, specifically around corruption. That's kind of like been my thesis for a while now, that the benefit blockchain, which is again done right and not for the hype of the money go high, but actually like on the on the core technological level it can address. That's why I'm inherently extremely excited about it, because it changes the evolutionary path of humanity. Because humanity has been known as being not very good at creating and maintaining complex social structures. Like if there is like more than a few people involved, it's going to be corrupted one way or the other. And the bigger the
Mhm.
system is, the more corrupted it is, because that's just quote unquote human nature. There is like really nothing in our evolutionary toolbox is designed to prevent this. Like we have morals and we kind of cheer people who can resist it. That's kind of the mechanism, but we cheer it because we know that most of us will not, and that's just what it
Yeah.
is. And but the blockchain, the beauty of it, again, when done right, is that you can eliminate the trust out of the equation altogether. So all of a sudden, you can create systems which are uncorruptible by design. And then if you don't need to trust the middleman, if you don't have to have an authority in between in general, whatever the system you're designing, all of a sudden it opens up giant opportunities again of self-organization, societal organization. And that's, I think, and that if that done right, that can power the AI revolution in a way which is going to be properly aligned. I think it's very, very important core piece to it, because today the more powerful tools they get, they're still going to be used by humans, and humans are corruptible, and it's going to be misused.
Yeah.
But if you have the framework which is inherently uncorruptible, that gives us a chance.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the ultimate goal. Um, I mean, there are some AI stuff that I've seen. Like when I was still at Amazon, there were services that were built um, that would detect. It was more anomaly detection, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say, than anything, to see like, okay, this person's never logged into this before. Why are they logging in? Like put up red flags, or I'm seeing this looks like a DDoS attack from all the other DDoS attack training that I've been trained on. Not that that's corruption, but there's some interesting things on like how AI can assist. But to your point, it's still trained on human data. It's trained on by
On human
humans.
data by humans, exactly. So it's like it's
Yes.
it's gonna have inherent limit into it, and it
Yes.
gives it gives like better supervision basically. But again, supervision for whom?
Right. Right. Yeah, I guess a question for you. Why do you like? I feel like blockchain's been around for a while now. Like, I feel like it should be being used more than it is. Do you think it's because it's wrapped up in cryptocurrency and that's where it sort of originated? Like, why is it not being used more?
I think it's I think it's just the kind of instinctive position. Like I heard about it enough. It should be better. It should be bigger. But it follows absolutely traditional technology cycle. It came around. It's like Bitcoin was live in 2008, so it hasn't been that long. It's like 15, 16 years. It's not that
Hmm.
much. And the blockchain, like kind of what you can do with it, only got picked up down the line. And it's very, very early on. And yeah, there were like first hype cycles, which everybody heard about it. And that's all technology is going through hype cycles. Like the simplest metaphor everybody brings up is a dot-com. When internet came around, there was a giant hype cycle. Everything was going to be internet, pets.com, and all of that. And then all of a sudden, 98% of projects completely died out because it was garbage. But the core technology was still there. It was still developing. And then a cycle later, all of a sudden, you see the core things popped out, which now becomes the pillars of the internet. And then it grew out of it and it evolved into what it is today. So from the blockchain perspective, it follows exactly the same track, and work and development never stopped. And like the interest in projects not going to go anywhere. And it's going to take another 5 to 10 years before you actually become meaningfully impacted by it. But also, even on that front, like I would disagree that it is not used. Like the Bitcoin itself right now is a moment to shine, and it's shining not just because ETFs are online and all of a sudden the money pouring in and number goes up, but also there are inherent use cases which make a giant difference. Speaking of like its reliability, efficiency, in money perspective, that's like huge highlights that your money is not your money, like in the financial system. Like always, if somebody else owns it and you have the IOU, in your pocket, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And like again, if you're in US, overall you're relatively safe in this giant bank crisis, which could have been and so far been avoided, kind of didn't impact much. But like if you live out abroad, there are many places where there is no alternative for you. Like the system just so corrupt, you like money being inflated daily, or completely bank shutdowns. You just there is nothing you can do. Like if you put it in gold, it's going to be confiscated. And then you have Bitcoin, and all of a sudden you have two things about Bitcoin: is one, it is yours, and it's not there is no way to confiscate it easily, at least, like without torture, basically. And another piece is that you can do the cross-border transactions easily. Like you don't pay, like this is one of the biggest use cases for crypto today is border transactions. When like if you from the migrant kind of typical countries where the migrants coming from to the Western world, and there is to transact to send money back over the old system up to 40% in transaction fees. So it's like it just completely being eaten away. It's ridiculous. And this crypto is effectively free comparatively to what it happens today. So it's giant use case right away. It's not what you experience in the largest, most robust economy in the world, but that's already giant use case for many, many, many people. And it's slowly growing to become a global use case. So I think use cases, just even on those hyped up scenarios, are already very valuable. And it's going to only get bigger, better, because again, fundamentally, that's uncorruptible system, financial system. And this is giant value, which not many people recognize still why it's valuable, but it is valuable for sole reason that it is uncorruptible. What we discussed before, the core concept of the uncorruptibility. And so, and other things being developed, being deployed again, the more financing, more land, more funding rather, went into the projects which can generate revenue, because that's how the incentive structure is done. Like if you're in venture, you have to invest into something which you know in 5 years can give you pay you back. And if it doesn't, then it's very hard to find funding for it. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. Like, and if good projects going to be better, and like infrastructure is being created, layered out, and when you have infrastructure, all of a sudden you need much less funding to build some cooler stuff. And so now it gets layered up, and you have this pyramid, and then you have a flourishing explosion of very interesting stuff which you haven't thought before, but already very valuable. So it's like again, my expectation is within 5 years, 10 years, you will be using blockchain yourself one way or the other. And within 15 years, it's probably going to be most of your stuff going to be somehow connected to it.
Interesting. So what happens when you're in your decentralized world? What's
you want to go there?
let's I mean, I know some of it might be NDA.
Some with the sensitive, but the core concept is not. The core concept is like, as far as again, I believe in the decentralized infrastructure, and even this unit, if you kind of at the core of it, it can use as any connection around you, and it's just trying to use all of them to its best capacity at all times. And that ultimately is this is behind it, is that you should be able to connect to all infrastructures around you. You shouldn't be locked out of the resource which is important to you by some sort of administrative limitation. There should be a way for you to access it. And if you're able to access many of them, all of a sudden the rules of the game change. That all of a sudden you are not the product, you're actually the customer, and you can actually choose what is serving you better, and you can like have some leverage at last as far as like the quality of the service, the price for the service becomes a real competitive environment where a customer becomes a focal point, which is monopolies or oligopolies, natural or unnatural, is typically not the case, because that's just not how the market works. And so so the big bright future of what we would like to see, or at least I would like to see within the telecom infrastructure, is that it needs to be decentralized. It needs to be kind of like the big players not going to go anywhere, and they need to be there because they know how to build the best and most performant networks out there. So they have a giant service and value to bring, but they need to be diluted somewhat around the edges with those alternative solutions, which can play a significant role as far as the service in the market and improving the ecosystem for everybody, for the big ones, for the small ones, and for first and foremost for the end customer, because as we all found out lately, that internet access is crucial for everybody, and it's going to get even more so over the time. So building it on the rails, which is inherently unsustainable from the reliability perspective, is just not going to do.
Interesting. So what would that look like? Like, okay, so let's say, V10 of this box
Mm-hmm.
would just basically, like, I might have, anywhere I go, I might have access to X number of networks, and you guys are providing a service and a piece of hardware that just wherever I am, I can use as many networks as I want. Is that the
Not
idea?
not the many methods as you want. Ideally, you should not think about how many networks you have. Ideally, you have this unit, you put it where you need it, and it works. And under the hood, you have the parameters you set up. What is more important to you? Is it more important the reliability? Is more important the throughput? Or is more important the price? So effectively, those three toggles you move around what you want to optimize for. And as soon as you set it up, the box on your behalf participates in this wireless marketplace of data, and it pulls all the available providers, whether it's big ones, whether it's small ones, whether it's your neighbors, whether it's satellite, whether it's some other mediums invented by them. Doesn't really matter. You have a pool of them, what available in a given location, and most of locations today already have a diversity of them. You just locked out from them, and you have this pool, and those providers start bidding on the service. So they can tell you, I can give you that amount of data for that much price with that sort of parameters on reliability and performance. How it's calculated is a separate conversation. But let's say there is this protocol which can provide you this data. And now your box can do the pick and choose and the bidding on your behalf. Like, I want this, and I want it to work together like that. So my customer, which is you, can actually have the best possible service for the best possible price wherever you are. And that's dynamic. Something is changing, it's adjusting, but you not the active participant in it, because it's going to be obviously way too overwhelming to do this auctioning and bidding and figuring it out. But it's just, you have very tiny configurations, what is most important for you, and we can find you the best solution and this automated, probably blockchain powered, uncorruptible protocol, which now everybody can subscribe to. So that's the ideal from the wireless side. But again, it doesn't have to be wireless. It can be any medium, can be wired, can be light, maybe quantum by then. We'll find out. But doesn't really matter. The idea is that you should be able to have diversity, and there is no reason for you to be locked from it. And if you do have the diversity, you know that the solution you get is the best quality for the best price, which means that your interest as a focal point, not the other way around.
Interesting. What a philosophy. Yeah, I guess, what do you think the chances of that succeeding with all the politics? I mean, a lot of what you talk about is just these big, deep pockets and senators probably being paid off and companies,
yeah. I mean, all of it. The way this world operates, it's all about resources, and the way the resources and market economy works is, you provide valuable enough product, you'll be given resources to bring this product next level. And that's the strategy here is very simple. So if our product today has value, people ready to buy it, people ready to subscribe and grow the ecosystem with $1 and with a personal participation, then we have more resources to develop more and more and more. And if by that time, like, if we grow big enough, we can actually kind of make those rules. Again, depends who you paid for. But if you paid by your customer, you kind of have to serve this customer, and that's kind of again, because we don't have the limiting factor. You can unsubscribe from us any moment, and you don't have to use our services. We not lock you out in any capacity. You be utilizing what you already have. We're just making it better, utilizing it in a better way, optimizing for your outcomes. But you can access all of it without us. So there is no really tie-in factor meaning that I have to make sure that you're happy with what I give you. Otherwise, you're going to switch and there is no way I can keep you. So because of this, I have an incentive to provide you the best possible solution. So whatever resources I get from you, I will have to reinvest to make your experience even better so I don't lose you. So as a result, I actually like healthy market economy participant in this capacity. And if I'm doing a good job at it, then I can grow big enough to get the resources to do the bigger things. At the end of the day, it's all about resources, and it's all about like, and resources again, it can be financial, it can be size of the ecosystem, participants. There's like different ways to look at it, but ultimately it's all about resources.
So you want to be poor till you're 60 is what I'm hearing. You're
There
going
is
to
a chance.
reinvest every last dollar.
There is a chance.
every dollar you have to invest back in.
Yes.
Yeah, the life of a startup. Okay. And I guess I know I want to be conscious. I know you have, some little kids running around over there, and
Well,
you
I put
probably
them down right before I joined, so that part
okay.
is settled.
That means you put them to bed, right? I don't have kids, so that doesn't
Yes,
mean
it
like
means you
they're
put them to
gone.
yes.
Okay, all right, got it. Like because a dog, you say you put them down. So I guess how do you think? So obviously this channel is broadcast, video
Mhm.
production, live streaming. Like, how do you think all of what you just said and the decentralization of networking and the internet and all that connectivity in general will change my industry? Will it? I mean, I have some visions of that I've talked to people about not showing up with tons of gear and being able to just show up with. I mean, obviously, you still need cameras, but with AI and how good the cleanup of it is, like I could show up with
Mhm.
maybe a much simpler camera, even that's just it says okay, I can fill in the pixels that aren't there, or it's low light. I can tell what this is supposed to be. So it, to me, I imagine being able to show up and do events and do productions in in a much simpler way, but still the missing link is the connectivity. I mean, that's why
Mhm.
this is kind of, to me, this is version one of what we're doing to get to a place where we don't have to roll up with a truckload of equipment to do an event. Right. But I guess, so what's your perspective on how it affects our business?
Well, that's the reason we in the vertical is because we see the value is clearly there from the day zero. Like there is an appetite, there's clear use cases, it's clearly needed by everybody, anywhere close to serious in the industry. They have to have something like this. And the so the product already is valuable, already bringing and solving your exact problem. The, the decentralization part you were asking for, that's a little bit trickier because you in the industry, the reason why you good customers because you care about the result. And decentralization and innovation typically paired with something which you cannot rely on as easily, at least without active maintenance. So, like if you're going to be like again one of those mesh networks, if you're going to be at an event, there are going to be some of those alternative mesh network providers. You cannot really rely on it on your own. You're not going to do it. It's too dangerous. With us, that's what we enable. Is that with us, you will be able to like you go to the event, and there is, let's say again, mesh network is a good example, so let's stick with it. You go to an event, you see this mesh network, or rather, we should see it at the end of the day, and we connect you to it, and all of a sudden you have like bigger pipe, lower latency, or whatever else the value this mesh network brings. But if it starts fluctuating, it starts dropping, you as a broadcaster should not notice it because it should like the core infrastructure we're already using, which again in our case it's the core three carriers, should still be there, should still carry the load, and everything should be fine. But what it enables is that now you have this capacity to use these alternative sources, whether it's Starlink, whether it's something more exotic and more new and less tested. Doesn't really matter, but you can start bringing more and more, and ideally, again, quality goes up, price goes down. But fundamentally, the flip for you, like when it's going to be very, very, very different formula, I think for you it's actually going to be longer because you have these much higher requirements. but we are smoothing out the transition because, again, with us, all of a sudden, the individual source doesn't have to be 100% reliable 24/7. With us, this individual source, if it can be even 30% reliable, but it works, we can use it. And you should be able to benefit from it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's why you guys see me holding up this red box and doing videos on it and playing with it and rack mounting it and making rack ears and all these crazy things, because that's where I see it going. I just yeah, I'd like to have, in a perfect world, like you talk about your future, I talk about the future of this company would be to have production studio, basically control rooms, let's say around the country. I have a friend Tony in North Carolina, friend Jay over in Ohio, who do this stuff. I have, to have people like sort of close, right? So we keep latency down and things like that. But to really not ever have to have someone like a whole team come out. So this it moves toward that direction. We are definitely not there yet. My wife and I just went full time with this last June. So we have some ways to go, just like I'm sure, you guys feel, of all the things you'd love to do. So that's where that's kind of the long-term goal would be able to, just take the devices and have them go straight to it. So, but appreciate you coming on, Anton, and last minute talking a little bit about this AT&T outage. Hopefully that's all we see. It'd be interesting if the Fed puts out any sort of additional report.
Probably gonna
you wonder,
be a moment before they do.
Yeah, and who knows how much we'll actually hear. You never know what's going on behind closed doors with that, how it'll be spun. But yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on. Anything interesting and new that you wanted to add about Mr. Net? Any new products, features, devices?
I should be prepared for this sort of question, but I'm not.
cleaning up things that you want to work better.
Yeah.
No, it's I know the client portal was something you were
we actually have you seen our new website?
No,
they just pushed a new website 2 days ago. There are like a lot of cleaning up on that one is still required. It's still like a little bit rough around the edges, but I'm pretty happy how it came out.
Really? Okay.
Especially on the big screen.
Yeah, let me see if let's see if it'll let me present share screen without giving Google my life here. Share. It's gonna go. Yeah, let's go to mrnet.us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! Look at that. Are these really your customers, or did you take this from someone else?
No, it's we serve them. Yeah, it's real.
Just kidding.
Everything is real.
Wow! Look at this. When did this release?
Wednesday or Tuesday, a couple days ago.
Wow! This is really nice. Responsive. Oh, I see you let out the other devices here. No kidding. Very nice. Hey, there you are.
This one, to click on this, you need to click see all. Oh, no, it actually works now. Perfect.
Everyone needs to stay online. That is that is
unfortunate color. See, like, there is like a few small things needs to be polished out. I know there is somebody who probably is listening. Will very appreciate if I ask you this question. Do you recognize the blue light?
This blue light?
Uh-huh. That's an Easter egg which nobody will ever understand, but it's very pleasing, the guy who came up with it. It's when you power up the box, The way you know it works is blue light comes up on our unit. So this is
Oh,
supposed to represent this.
I was thinking like Microsoft Edge or something. That's what I
Oh
was
no.
like. Is it like a because you're a Google guy?
When you go back there, come to the live streaming landing page. I think you will like it even better. If
Okay,
you
let me
scroll a
do
little
it.
bit down and by industry, the video streaming, come up, go back
Oh,
up. This
oh, I
section by
see.
industry.
Okay.
Yeah, go to video streaming. Yep, this is where I
Wow,
placed this.
I like it. What happened here? These yellow. What are these? I use these for something. I'm gonna download
Signal
the.
radius.
Oh, it's Signal. Oh, okay. Look at that. You guys did a good job.
Okay. And
Hey, look at
there's you.
these.
Yeah, here you go. See,
We'll have to get Peter on next time.
good
Yeah,
idea.
you'll have to check out TVJ, check out Quick Tech Solutions. Peter did a video on he did a he's a super smart guy. Satellites. Wow. All right, I'm gonna have to go spend some time on the site. Very nice. You know, so we don't get inception here. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Anton. I'll let you drop and I'll close out and say goodbye to the peeps here, the streaming
Wonderful.
peeps. But thank you for joining. We'll have to have you back on. I'll have to
Thank you,
do some
Joe.
more streams
Always fun.
and we'll talk soon. Yeah, thanks again.
Cheers.
All right, take care. All right, it's just me. Let's see. Let's go back to the chat before we say adios. So iStream Pool says Carrero is what they use, which is a DDoS mitigation that detects AI anomalies. Very cool. It's a line card with the Juniper routers. And Todd says camera to cloud. Yes, a lot of companies, big companies, are jumping on the camera to cloud. In fact, was having a conversation about GoPros that you can actually have them as soon as they connect to Wi-Fi, they can start uploading footage immediately. So if you walk in the door after your trip and you use the GoPro, you can have them just automatically start uploading. Or you get back to your hotel or cabin or whatever, which I thought is pretty cool. It goes to the GoPro cloud, of course, but it's neat. Todd says rugged version in the works and new website. Yeah, the new website that is really cool. So I see we have 9 people here. Appreciate y'all. Does anybody have any? Oh, Todd's saying good night. Good night, Todd. Thanks for joining. I know David's probably still here, and Jeremy, and a few others. So if anybody else has any questions or comments that you want to chat about before we wrap up, I have nowhere to rush to be. And I am testing out StreamYard. So definitely let me know what you think. I mean, now that I'm full screen, I could probably take my name off the screen. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Um, let me know what you guys think. I'm running, so just so you know, I'm running through a Sony camera, and this microphone's plugged into the camera just so we try to keep lip sync properly done. And then that's going into a Blackmagic web presenter, which is just USB as a webcam into my computer. And then I'm using StreamYard as the actual streaming because I like I was saying, I wanted to test out there's some definitely I haven't used StreamYard in probably 2 years. I used it when I was at Amazon. We were doing actually a Twitch show on the service I was on. Um, so it's definitely come a long way. A lot more stuff you can do. You can record on each individual person's devices, and you can have up to 3 destinations. And then another thing I saw, and Jeremy, maybe you can comment on this. It looks like that when I have a guest in, I can also have up to 3 of my guests put in their own streaming destination. So, for example, if Jeremy, you were to come on, I don't need your stream key, and you don't have to share anything with me. You could just go in and put that in, and then send it to your YouTube channel, and I could be sending it to my YouTube channel. So I thought that was pretty cool of a new thing with StreamYard. A bunch of them have popped up recently. I thought the 1080p was in the lower tier though originally, but maybe I'm wrong. It's been a while. Um, so yeah, so if I'll give it another minute here. Let's see what else. What else did I want to mention before we wrap up? There, Tony did a great video. If you haven't seen QuickTech Solutions video on Zoom ISO, and eventually I'm going to get to doing a little bit of a deeper dive on how I'm using it. I have a few changes since I did the video on the other Sonnet box. I'm actually using another Sonnet, actually two different Sonnet enclosures for a Blackmagic Design deck link, and also um, another enclosure that holds two Mac Minis. It's a small 1U enclosure. It's only about this deep, and it actually can hold two Mac Minis. Not as sophisticated as the box that I had done before. If you haven't seen that, I did a video on an enclosure. It holds one Mac Mini, but it gives you two PCIe card slots, so you can put two DeckLink cards in from Blackmagic Design. But the latest rack, so now I have basically three racks. I have my networking rack, which this usually goes in. I have the control / Zoom ISO rack, which will have Mac Mini. It's got patch panel. It's got a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and it's got the Sonnet enclosure for one Blackmagic DeckLink card. So that's the control, and also that'll be my companion. So I'll have like a keyboard and mouse and a Stream Deck. All that, there's like a 2U drawer that's in that rack. So that'll be one rack. The network rack has all my routing and IPs and connectivity, and then the third rack will be the switching rack. So that's got a couple of screens in it. It's got the AT&T Constellation 2ME and couple of hyperdecks and a web presenter HD. So I can do playback and record. I'll really just use them for recording. I'll probably do most of my playback through Pro Presenter because hyperdecks are just annoying with file formats. So you're on site at a corporate event and somebody hands you flash drives like, here's the 10 videos you need to play in 10 minutes. It's like, oh no, hold on a second. I have to convert them all to ProRes 422 10-bit with and then it still doesn't work because it's not the right flavor. So yeah, it's Pro Presenter or forget the other one that we use sometimes, but that computer, that the rack, the control rack, is also the media playback rack. So that Mac Mini with the M2 Pro chip in it will be what we'll use to be playing back. Jeremy says yes, if people have a StreamYard account that works. Oh, so you have to have a StreamYard account? Is that okay? I didn't realize that the guest has to have a StreamYard account. Interesting. So alrighty then. Well, if nobody has any other questions, appreciate you joining and sticking around for almost a couple of hours here. I'm gonna head home, get out of the studio. If you do need any live streaming help, advice, video production, social media management, that is what we do. Our main company is Capture the Concept, and then Streaming CT is our streaming and live broadcast. So feel free to reach out. And thank you all for joining. And we'll see you soon. We'll have to get back on and do this more often. Take care.